Hello, my name's Steve Haynes, and I'm the co-author of this book, How to Go to Work, the honest advice no one ever tells you at the start of your career. And in these bite-sized sessions for Leeds careers, I'll be going through the tools and tips that will help you make a great start in the world of work. And this session is particularly about the topic of productivity. Now, I'm sure you have some great ways of working that you've learned through your university life that will help you get organized. The to-do lists, the time planners that have been able to support you to get your assignments in on time. Well, when you go into the world of work, things get a little bit more complex. The tasks a little less clear. The things you need to do will often be competing for your time and be happening all at once. So what we're going to look at is some honest advice about what can make you really productive at work. This will be great because you'll be able to get a job done well, you'll be able to set a really good impression to your boss and to your team, and you'll be able to finish the working day at a reasonable time and enjoy some of that leisure too. So we'll be covering things like learning your role and clarifying the tasks that you're going to need to do. We'll be looking a bit at how to set your goals and how to create a good relationship with your boss, managing upwards to make sure that you're the most productive in the work that you do. And we'll also be talking a bit about how you can communicate really well to make sure everybody knows what you're doing, how you're getting on, and when they can expect the result. So let's start with the biggest picture, and I really mean the biggest picture. The first thing to do is not just to produce a task list, but to really look at what it is that you want to achieve. Now, there's a wonderful tool that they have in management consulting called MICE. That's mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. And what I recommend that you do is sit down and write out all of the things that you need to achieve. Write that long to-do list. You could draw a picture of a potential future. You can start to think what it would look and feel like when you get the work done. That way, you'll be driving your work alongside your own priorities rather than the inbox or the to-do list that's bearing down on you and demanding every moment of your time. So what I want you to do is to start by thinking ahead and imagining what it looks like, what it feels like when you've got the job done. Next thing I want you to do is within that set some really clear goals. What are the things you absolutely have to achieve? What are the things that you would like to achieve? And what are the things that you think will show all of that enthusiasm and all that excellence that you can bring to your job when you've achieved them? And set out yourself 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 high-level goals about what you want to achieve over the next weeks and months. Within that, then start to break down the tasks to do. And the more you can break these down into detail, the better. Really put lots of ideas down in as many ways as possible about how you will achieve that task. Think about what you need from others and what others might need from you. And when you've done this, start to check it with your boss, with your team members, with all the people that can help you refine that task list. I want you to think about what new things will happen when you've achieved those goals, when you've been able to complete those tasks. And what you can do then is start to think, well, so how can I make this the best possible quality? What options can I explore to make sure that I can get to the result that I want, maybe quicker, maybe better? And then lastly, I want you to just take a moment to reflect on where you will start. This is one of the most difficult things of all. A really complex task that's moving and shifting and that's in parallel with a number of other things you need to do can feel quite overwhelming, but it needn't. You've just got to start somewhere. And from that, start to build out what you're going to do next. My second tip, and this is quite a famous one from one of the original productivity gurus, is about looking at all of the things that you need to do in terms of their size. And the parallel is drawn with a jam jar. You're given big rocks and little pebbles and sand and water. And the question is asked, how do you fill the jam jar? Well, the answer is start with the big rocks. This might seem counterintuitive. The most difficult, the most challenging things might feel like the things you want to instinctively avoid. That's absolutely the opposite of where you should start. Try and tackle some of the big things first. It doesn't matter if you complete them. It's just about getting some progress against those big goals. Next, you might want to get to the end of that, maybe 20, 30 minutes of work and start to work on some of the smaller tasks, the pebbles, start to fill your jar with those as well. These could be much more doable, much clearer things that will help you get to the goal that you want to achieve. Then look at the sand. What are all of the interconnecting things, the things you've been sent, the tiny little requests, the can you just complete this form, or would you mind going to this quick meeting, or can we just respond to this email because it needs to be done today? Those little bits will make sure that you're keeping all of the progress going that you need to. And then that lovely water, which completes the whole picture. What are the things that you need to do in your working day just to make sure it runs well? Taking 5 minutes before a meeting just to make sure that you've planned out what it is you're going to say in that meeting. At the start and the end of the day, writing the to-do list and setting some priorities around it that will help you organize your time that day and the next day. Take some time for learning and reflection as well, so you're not just constantly going from one thing to the next. And of course, every now and again, maybe give yourself a bit of a break. Go and take a bit of time away from your screen or away from the workplace and just give yourself some chance to recoup and relax. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is how you create a sense of priority. This can be one of the most difficult things, and there's a wonderful tool to help with this called the Eisenhower Matrix. This comes from the American president, who said that when he got into office, he found that there were so many urgent and not important things that he had to deal with, and that he wanted to spend more time on the important ones. So what you do with this matrix is divide a piece of paper into 4 parts. In the top corner, I want you to write the things that are urgent and important. Next to that, the things that are important but not urgent. They could wait a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks, but they still need to be done, and they're the things you want to achieve. Write down the things that are urgent but not important. You're being demanded of your time, your attention, your focus on these things every minute of the day, and you could easily just do these urgent and not important things and miss the real things that you want to achieve. And last of all, put down the things, and be honest about this, that really aren't that urgent and really aren't that important. And then take that step of just trying to get rid of these. You might want to delegate them elsewhere. You might want to say, no, I actually can't do those. They're just not the things that are helping you achieve your goals. You want to then give enough time to the urgent and important. Do those first. They're really going to help you achieve your goal. With those things that are urgent but not that important, make sure you're getting them done. Or maybe you need to delegate them out or push them aside to some way in the work that you're doing. This will help you get the right things done first. And where things are feeling very important but not urgent, do make sure you block some time to do this. There's a wonderful technique called time blocking, and this was voted in the Harvard Business Review the most effective productivity tool. And what time blocking means is that you look at your task, and this is really best done with those non-urgent things, and think, actually, how long will that take me? Consider if you have to produce a presentation for a meeting, or you're producing a plan that needs to be presented back to a client. It's really high stakes, it really matters, but you know it doesn't need to be done straight away. Make sure that the following Wednesday or this Friday or sometime next week, you're putting in the time that it will take to do it. That might need to be a couple of different blocks of time. It might need to be something that you're reviewing and discussing as you go. It might not be that you can do it all at once, but no problem. You've got some time set aside to be able to do these things, and that's how you get those important things done. You can go further looking at your day, especially if you're in a fast-paced career or if you're trying something new, to make sure that you're giving yourself the time to do these things. Block that time at the start and the end of the day. Make sure that you're taking a lunch break. Give yourself breaks in the tasks that you need to do. Be realistic about how long they would take, and give yourself plenty of time to set up beforehand and to reflect afterwards. So now you've got a great set of tools that will help you explore all of the things that you want to achieve, put them in order, organize when you're going to do them, get a good sense of variety in your day, set some real sense of priority, and then block the time to get it done. So how do you do this in the context of a workplace when there's lots of different priorities, when you're not the only person who's relevant, when you might be waiting on somebody else to produce a piece of work so that you can do your task? Well, the first thing you need to do is to build a really great relationship with your boss so you can make sure you're doing the things that are right for you, that you're fulfilling your job description. You can be incredibly busy, but still have a perception around you that you're not quite hitting the mark in what it is you're doing. So review your job description with your boss. Seek guidance on the parameters with a simple question of, is this something I should be doing? Maybe start with some of the more simple tasks to show the progress that you're making and review those, and then keep a note each day about how that's working out. Ask your colleagues for feedback as well. That's really helpful to make sure you're on track doing what they need from you. There are a huge amount of expectations when you first go into the workplace, and being able to make sure that you're meeting those expectations and that others are meeting your expectations too is vital to have a really happy and productive time at work. Now, another thing that's going to be hugely important to do is manage this huge flow of information that's coming to you all the time. There are more and more ways to communicate in the workplace. You might be familiar with email, but often you'll have some things like Slack or Teams messages. You could have different project management techniques. The culture of your workplace will be really dependent on how work is received and given. Maybe it's a casual chat in a small office over a cup of coffee. It might be that actually you have a very strong project management system and things need to be deliberately planned, discussed, and then executed. Making sure you're well aligned with the productivity culture of your organization is hugely important. And that's going to take a lot of observation, a lot of consideration, and a lot of discussion to make sure that you're meeting all of those expectations about how that business gets things done. And then there are the constant distractors of your time as well. I worked out really quite early on in my career that there was no way I'd ever be able to manage my inbox. I was receiving, and I worked this out, a message every 3 minutes, and it would take on average a minute, maybe a minute and a half to respond to them. So far, so good. I could just respond to all of those emails and maybe take a lunch break. But of course, during my day, I was having meetings, I was going on site visits, I was traveling to and from places. They simply didn't add up. I couldn't get all of those emails done. So I started to develop a management technique for this. And what I did was these things. Firstly, don't use your inbox as your to-do list. This is a big mistake that I see all the time. And I'll be honest, I occasionally drift back into it. If you read a message, file it somewhere. And I have a inbox that says action, I have one that says read, and I have one that says pending. I know that I can go back to my inbox at certain times of the day and sort those emails out. And again, using a tool like the Eisenhower matrix, I can make sure that I'm prioritizing those urgent and important issues and not forgetting those things that are important, but not that urgent. But at least I'm not reading the same emails over and over again. I'll go back at a designated time that I've blocked out to my action box and make sure that I'm keeping up to date with them. Maybe less frequently look through the pending just to be sure that the things that should be happening are happening. And then when I'll get the occasional piece of time to really read and develop my learning in my topic, I'll go to that read box and just go into a bit more detail about a few things that have come my way. One of the other tips I use, and when I change a job or when I go into a new environment, is create an inbox folder that says this. This looks important, but I don't know what to do with it yet. And I'll quite often put a lot of things into that box, and slowly over time, as I begin to understand my role, the parameters of my role and the expectations on me, I will look at that in a bit more detail. And suddenly I'll think, oh, I do understand it. This is relevant. I do need to do something about it. But here's the critical thing. When you receive that email, ask yourself this question. Is this for me? Can I do something about it? Is my action the next one? And if it is, that's the bit you need to respond to. And if it's your action a bit later, you need to be aware of it, then great. Put it in that box that says pending or read. And if it really isn't anything to do with you, if it is just for information, or maybe it's one of those emails that's gone to everybody and you just need to understand and receive it, make sure you delete it quickly as well. Getting rid of stuff is wonderfully liberating. Now, the last thing I think is critically important in productivity is to find out what's working and what's not. Make sure you're testing and reviewing at all times what you're doing and how you're doing it. And the best way to do this is to document your work. At the end of the day, consider, and especially in those first few weeks and months, what did I learn today? What new knowledge have I received? What different ways of thinking about it have I learnt? What else might I need to know about in order to do this job really well? And then you can use this great technique with your line manager or your team. We call it the W3. So W1, what went well? What did I learn? What did I achieve? And making sure that you're getting good feedback and the praise that you deserve from a job well done. W2, what went less well? What were the things that could have been improved upon? And even the most wonderful project always has a few things you could have done a bit better. And if it didn't go that well, this gives you a real chance to learn and to have a focused conversation where you're not diving in for excuses or trying to mop up a mess. All of that's past now. What you're doing is finding out why things went wrong. And the third W, what you can do differently next time. And that's a great conversation to have with your boss. And I do recommend dividing it into those separate questions rather than bouncing in between them. You'll get a much richer result. The best thing you can do about it then is keep track of the actions about what you need to do next, prioritize how you would do things differently and critically. And this is the thing, if you take one thing away from this video that I really want you to know, is to ask for help. Because when you're at the start of your career, when you're at the start of a new role, when you're doing something new, when you're put onto a fresh project, the most effective way to be productive is to ask for help. Don't spend time sitting there wondering whether you've done something right or not. Have the conversation and people will always be happy to help. A great piece of advice just to finish with from Graham Olcott, and I recommend his work hugely. His book on being a productivity ninja is brilliant, and a lot of the thoughts that I've gathered have been through him. He says that the most successful work-life balance turns out to not be how you do your work, but how you manage your mental boundaries, how you make sure you're thinking through what it is that you do and learning critically when to not do something, to deprioritize it, to not action it, and when to get on with something that's important and urgent, and giving that wonderful time to rest and recoup and be ready for the next day when you finish your work for the one you're in.